food, without firewood, and almost without hope. Families ate wallpaper paste and sawdust. Women prowled basements for corpses to eat, and there were rumors that gangs of men who had turned cannibal went out at night to hunt for victims in alleys. Germans rained down incendiary bombs on the roofs and strafed the squares and avenues during nightly air raids. Adolf Hitler had demanded that the city and all its inhabitants be utterly destroyed. Secret Directive Number 1A 1601/41. The Führer has decided to erase the city of Leningrad from the face of the earth. I have no interest in the further existence of this large population point after the defeat of Soviet Russia. German High Command felt it would be too costly to feed all the prisoners of Leningrad if they were captured, and Hitler considered the Russian Slavs, like the Jews, to be an inferior race, fit only for slavery or extermination. His vision was to make room to live for his Aryan cohorts. Russia would become breadbasket, oil field, and Teutonic playground in the thrilling gymnastic future of the triumphant Nazi Reich. In New York, on June 3rd, the microfilm was unspooled and stretched across an illuminated table. Men inspected it with magnifying glasses. Contained on the film was not peculiarly the plans for some technological secret, a submarine or the atomic bomb. It was not some fragment of Enigma code or unscrambled German battle order. Instead, the microfilm contained 252 pages of the musical score for the Seventh Symphony of a nervous Russian composer named Dmitri Shostakovich. Its codes and symbols would be translated by an orchestra of more than 100 and would be broadcast to millions sitting by their radios. But we are still arguing today about what secret messages the piece contains, what cries for help. The score included few words, a few typical performance directions in Italian, as was the tradition, and on the first page an inscription in Russian, dedicated to the city of Leningrad. For this reason, it was called the Leningrad Symphony. Why had the Soviet government arranged so carefully for this piece to be shipped to the West, across battle lines, across a Middle East that was swarming with fascist tanks, across seas festering with enemy subs? How could it possibly be worth it? And who was the composer of this desperately sought-after score? Dmitri Shostakovich spent the first several months of the Siege of Leningrad trapped in that city under fire, writing much of his Seventh Symphony in breaks between air raids. He had first announced that he was working on the piece over the radio in September 1941, just a few weeks after the Germans had started shelling the city. He had explained his intentions to an audience of thousands. The day of his radio broadcast, Shostakovich almost missed his appointment to speak on the air. As he was walking through the streets of the city, the Germans started their daily assault. Sirens howled. An urgent voice barked over the loudspeakers, "This is the local defense headquarters. Air raid! Air raid!" Shostakovich scampered to a bomb shelter. Planes roared over the city's spires and canals. Explosions echoed through the classical avenues. The composer hid until the all-clear sounded. As a result, by the time he got to the radio studio, he was almost late. The staff rushed him in front of a microphone, and he delivered his message in his high, tense tenor. It buzzed out of radios all over the city, where buildings burned and windows gaped without glass. "An hour ago, I finished scoring the second movement of my latest large orchestral composition," he told his fellow citizens. "In spite of the war and the danger threatening Leningrad, I wrote the first movements quickly. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this so that the people of Leningrad listening to me will know that life goes on in our city. Leningrad is my country. It is my native city and my home. Many thousands of other people from Leningrad know this same feeling of infinite love for our native town, for its wonderful, spacious streets, its incomparably beautiful squares and buildings. When I walk through our city, a feeling of deep conviction grows within me that Leningrad will always stand, grand and beautiful, on the banks of the Neva, that it will always be a bastion of my country, that it will always be there to enrich the fruits of culture." We still have the piece of paper on which he typed out the message he read on air. Shostakovich must have left it on a desk at the radio station when he was finished with the announcement. It was used for scrap paper. On the other side, the studio director scribbled his notes about the lineup of radio shows for the next day's broadcasts, instructions on how to construct barricades, suggestions for how to defend your home against German troops, and finally the recipe for Molotov.